I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Monday, July the 18th, brought to you in part by Joplin Regional Stockyards. Nobody has sold more green grass yearlings in the last 3 weeks or so than Joplin Regional Stockyards. They had that yearling special there the week before the 4th. They sold 10,000 head of yearlings there with 100 or so loads of yearlings. Then they had the Big Bang video sale with 40,000 head, mostly all yearlings on there. Came back the next Monday with 10,000 again, 100 or so loads of yearlings. And they are going to have another yearling special here today on Monday, 10,000 head. Jackie told them to be prepared to start as early as 4 o'clock in the morning so they can start getting that done before the heat gets up. But they are going to sell another 100 loads of yearlings and 10,000 head on offer at Joplin Regional Stockyards here today on Monday. You can go on to dvauction.com, view and bid that sale. And then don't forget, another new crimp in it is they're going to have a primetime livestock video here today on Monday the 18th starting at 4 p.m. Go on to primetimelivestock.com and you can view that or joplinstockyards.com, and you can view the lots that they have. They've got several loads of yearlings that they're going to sell on their in-house video with help from DV Auction at 4 o'clock p.m. Central. Don't miss that big sale. I tell you what, we're going to be out of them one of these days. Post-holiday fireworks, and during the week of the 4th, which the 4th was on a Monday, so we saw all your big high volume sales closed on that Monday. Then we started seeing some big video sales. The summer videos start late in the week on that Monday, but not a lot going on in the sales. But this past week is when we really saw the fireworks on your feeder cattle market especially, and everything that was going on. But my gosh, last week we had so many big headlines that happened. Started out the week talking about the long trailer lines at the sale barns in and around Central Texas. Huge runs in those little auctions down there that typically sell from 12 to 1,500, maybe 2,000 on a big day, having at least twice as many cattle, maybe 3 times as many as normal. And yes, you can say that part of the reason was because they didn't have a sale the week before, but they don't typically have these big sales the week after the 4th of July either. But I mean, trailer lines with over 100 pickups and trailers in them and stretching over a mile long. You just don't see that. I tell you, the one they had at Emory, Texas a week ago Saturday was the longest one I'd ever seen, but they've had them all over. Graham, Texas, Decatur, Texas, going down further south towards the Flint Hills, Mason, Texas. But all those sale barns, and those are kind of mom and pop sale barns. They're not high volume sales. They don't sell lots of cattle typically, but just everybody having to sell out. It is so dry in Texas, and I've told you guys before, up here in the panhandle of Texas, yeah, we're terrible dry, but we're used to it being terrible dry. You get down there below the panhandle and stretching pretty much the borders of Texas all the way down into South Texas, they're not used to being as dry. Of course, far west Texas is dry. That's the desert. Of course, they're dry too, but you get around North Texas, Dallas, Fort Worth, East Texas, going out towards Tyler. You go down in the hill country down there, Fredericksburg, east and south of San Antonio, north of San Antonio, all around. They're used to big rains, and they're used to a lot of water in ponds and in creeks to water those cattle. They don't have wells to water those cattle. They are screwed. There's no water out there for those cattle to drink. There's no grass for them to eat. You can't afford the hay. Some people can. If you had like a seed stock you were trying to hold together, maybe you couldn't really afford to do it, but you could spend the money to do it. Maybe some hobby farmers can afford to do it, but a typical small producer down in central Texas and all around the outlying areas cannot afford to buy hay. Now, this ain't your big ranches, and Texas is the #1 cow-calf state. I'm willing to venture that they are not the biggest cow state either next year or the next. But like I said, it could take National Ag Statistics Service, 10 or 15 years to pick up on that. But they have sold so many cattle. They have culled so deep. They have had so many small producers sell out their entire herd, which might only be 30 to 50 head, but still it adds up. And that land is worth $5,000 to $7,000 an acre, even if it's rural, because everybody wants to have a little ranch in Texas. And I tell you what, it has been devastating, this drought. And they've been having one every 10 or 12 years here, been having a big drought in Texas. But I tell you what, this one is taking out more of your small producers than the ones previous, and I really doubt a lot of them go back into it. It just doesn't make sense for them to do it. They've all got a town job, their property's worth a lot of money, and we have lost a lot of producers in the state of Texas. It has also killed your kill cow market nationwide, pretty much. We were selling cows rocking right along all the way up to 4th of July. Of course, they were building up their stockpiles to go into the 4th, but a lot of high dressing cows selling over $1, and some of them way over $1.10. Well, all of a sudden the last couple of weeks, and not just in Texas, but all around, it takes a hell of a cow to bring 90. And most sale barns don't have cows bring 90 anymore. They might have their top best cow bring 85 cents. But, it's just been so many of them hit those markets down in dry Texas. And it's also dry going up into Oklahoma and Arkansas and places like that too. But just really been tough. But Texas pasture conditions, to put that in perspective, 83% of Texas pastures in poor to very poor condition. Ouch. Big videos, we talked about those last week. We got our big Western video market going on Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday last week, and then all of last week you had the week in the Rockies, which happened in Cheyenne, Wyoming this year, but monster prices in those sale barns. We saw Western Video Market on Monday. They sold their yearlings, and their yearlings that were back in there towards western Nebraska and more in the center part of the United States. We saw 1,000 to 1,025 pound yearling steers for September delivery. They were programmed steers, but bringing up 182, 184 on steers weighing over $1,000. On Western Video Market. We saw similar type things going on at Week in the Rockies through Superior. We saw a lot of summer delivery yearling steers weighing from 8 to 950 pounds on Superior, selling from 174 to 188, with program yearling steers up to 195, weighing from 8 to 950. But monster prices. Calves were bringing big prices too, but we have now broken records that go back all the way to 2015 when we were coming off of those all-time record highs of 2014. But very impressive market there. We saw your board kind of come in and support a percentage of that craziness. Your feeder board jumped on Tuesday almost $5 in response to the videos a little bit, but mostly because your grains come crashing down on Tuesday. And we saw our new crop corn as low as 586.5 this past week. We saw your old crop July go off the board, and it plummeted all the way down to under $7 a bushel at $6.95. Where are those guys saying that corn was going to be $10 a bushel? It got close to $10 a bushel in Southern Plains feedlots down in the Texas Panhandle by the time they got it there, and the positive basis that they had down there. But you can bet on your Corn Belt corn farmer to have a bumper crop. We're going to have a bumper crop this year. There's some spots that's turned off really hot and dry the last couple of weeks, and it may not be the greatest there, but I tell you what, your Eastern Corn Belt is going to pick up anything that the Western Corn Belt lost, because they've got great looking crops out there. And in your driest spots in the Corn Belt anywhere, the very driest spots, they are talking about maybe chopping some of that. Still going to make a hell of a lot of feed, guys. But your northern feeders, mostly your western Iowa farmer feeders and some eastern Nebraska farmer feeders, they absolutely blew the roof off of Bassett, Nebraska, but they've had that thing replaced so many times, they pretty much got it down to a science. But, and a lot of other sales too that we're having big special, yearling specials coming off of the holidays there after the 4th of July. But last week we just saw craziness in Bassett, Nebraska. They had their big barbecue special, had 11,000 head of cattle on offer. They sold almost 3,100 head of 9-weight yearling steers, best in the world, averaged 948 pounds with a weighted average price on all of them of $181.93 on nearly 3,100 head of 9-weight steers, averaging right at 9.5. That is impressive, guys. But the Flint Hills, we've seen the bulk of your cattle sell on a direct basis in the Flint Hills. And most of them are yearling steers. They've got spayed heifers out there and a few still natural heifers out there. But your 800 to 900 pound yearling steers coming off the Flint Hills, mostly selling from 170 to 175. And of course, the blacker they are, the more northern type they are, the higher you can get up to 900 pounds, and the higher within that 170 to 175 range you can keep that price. Some of your plainer ones, though, there's not that big a spread in them, guys. We got a twice as big a spread in our fat cattle as we do in Flint Hill yearlings coming off direct. Some of those cattle have got a lot of crossbred on them and a little bit of leather hanging on them. You know, they can still bring in the 170s, weighing in the low to mid 800 pound range there. But those are the best feeding cattle in the world. Those outfits that are normally active buying those Flint Hill blue stem yearlings, they hate to give the big prices for them, but everybody wants them, and they hate not to buy them, because the more of them they don't buy, the more feedlots that haven't been getting those cattle, they get to see what they'll do. And it's just unbelievable. They might gain 4 pounds a day and another 3 pounds at night, guys. It's just unbelievable what those blue stem yearlings will do coming off there. They're the best performing cattle of the world, and they don't have to be the best cattle in the world to do it. But your fat cattle market failed again, lower again for the second week in a row, and your dress market lost $6 last week. But you know, everybody's so excited about your cattle board, which not your live cattle board, because it doesn't even work anymore, trading, you know, under 135 at the end of the week, when you know, bulk of your cattle were bringing, you know, close to 145 in the northern plains. And so, you know, people that think that your cattle market, your live cattle market, is the futures, well, there you go. How would you like to be somewhere in western Iowa and ask somebody what the live cattle market was, and they give you the CME live cattle futures price? They're $10 off. So that is not your market. I've always told you guys, cash market is the market. What's somebody willing to pay for a load of whatever? I don't care if it's 2-weight steers, 5-weight steers, 8-weight steers, or a load of fat steers weighing 1,500. What's somebody willing to pay, and what's somebody willing to take for that? Of course, in the southern plains, it's more like 136. So we got that big disparage there, continuing there. But for these big prices that they've been paying for these feeder cattle, a lot of them are breaking even in the mid 150s and further up from there, maybe into the 160s. And the farmer feeders that do a lot of the work themselves, and they've got free corn and old money, you know, that's great for those guys. But you got to figure your opportunity costs, and you've got to show me that we can average 150 from north to south in your 5-area feeding region before I'll believe it. Show me that 150 average on your 5-area feeding region weighted average price there. We can't get anywhere near that. And anytime we start to even approach it, we get all this resistance pushing back. You know, the northern plains guys can do it because they've got leverage and they trade cattle in a negotiated manner. Southern plains guys do not care what the market is. They're only worried about the basis. And whenever your live cattle futures can't get anywhere near earshot of what the market is, they like it even more because they've got all that basis to work with. But it just keeps your market as a whole under pressure, and it's broke, guys. We got to do something to get this fixed. But we finally started seeing some supportive ag media late last week. It's the first major nationwide supportive stories we've heard about industry reforms, and farmprogress.com online news there put out an article late last week that said consensus is building for industry reforms. And they actually talked about Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act in a positive light, had well-known, educated, and informed analysts that were on there talking positive about it, saying that the Grassley-Fisher bill, which is Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act, is the only option that we have to save things and to help the market and save your producers at the cow-calf level, really. And you guys that aren't worrying about that because you're cow-calf producers, that bill is for you. It's not necessarily just for your fat cattle sellers. It's to keep your backgrounders and your cow-calf people in business, and we're losing them all the time. I told you about losing them in Texas. But let's talk about your board for last week. August live cattle futures, Monday was up 220, Tuesday was up 52, Wednesday was up 20, and then they pulled the rug out. Thursday down $1.47, Friday down 47 cents. August live cattle futures ended the week at 134.92, under 135, up 97 cents. October ended the week up 60 cents at 139.55. It really had nowhere to go but up with feeder cattle futures pulling on it and your grains being down. But August feeder cattle, check out early in the week on August feeders, up 3.15 on Monday, up 4.70 on Tuesday, up $1.22 on Wednesday, then Thursday down $1.90, Friday down $2.55, ending August feeder cattle at the end of the week at 176.35. That was still up 4.63 for the week. Big gains. September ended the week at 179.67, up 4.95. So those were big gains. Your August feeder cattle were actually over 180 at one point through the week, but corn down big. December new crop corn. That's another good thing about corn, is getting that old crop July off of there, off of the board, and not seeing that big price anymore, which I told you it dipped below $7 before it left the board. But December new crop corn ended the week at 603 3/4. That's down 19 3/4. Beans for November new crop 1342 1/4, down 54 1/4. And Kansas City hard red winter wheat with harvest pressure right there. September contract ended the week at 837 1/2, down $1.13 1/4 a bushel. Ouch. How about your fat cattle market? Through Thursday, they'd sold 69,400 and did not do hardly any business on Friday. Another weak volume in your 5-area feeding region. You know, some of these opponents of Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act say that just because you're selling more cattle negotiated doesn't mean it's going to help your market. I'm not saying the market's going to be higher every week, but typically if you sell more volume negotiated, you've got a higher trending market, and if you sell less volume, you've got a lower trending market. Last 2 weeks have been very disappointing in the volume, so has the price levels. But 5-area feeding region live cash prices last week, 136 to 147, steady to $3 lower. Weighted average up through Thursday was 142.09 through your 5 areas. That was $2 lower and a little bit more than the previous week. So we're in a down market on fats, guys. But, you know, like I said, Southern Plains sold 137 earlier in the week, 136 late in the week. Northern Plains sold from 144 to 145 throughout the week, but mostly 230 dressed, and that was probably $3 lower or so. But dressed sales, and mostly in the Northern Plains, a little bit of northern Kansas sells dressed, but 224 to 232, that's $6 lower on your price range, and weighted average dressed steers 229.46, almost $3 lower. Friday didn't have much trade. Colorado's confidential because we've only got 1 to 2 packers playing in Colorado, and I showed you last week that Colorado is the 1-5 area of the 5 areas that's got the best grading cattle. The highest of choice in the higher grading cattle is in Colorado. Can't even get a third packer to come in there and pick around. Of course, I know freight's high. But Iowa, 600 head on Friday, 21,100 for the week. Friday sales were towards the bottom end of the price range from 141 to 142 and dressed from 229 to 230. Nebraska, Kansas, and Texas had no confirmed sales on Friday. Nebraska sold 31,200 head for the week, which is about normal for them. Kansas, only 11,000 head traded negotiated last week in Kansas. That is ridiculously low. Texas, only 7,000 head, and they're the ones that are getting backed up. They've got more market-ready cattle in the Southern Plains, and the packers are trying to stick them with them and let them hold them in the heat. But only 7,000 head negotiated sales in Texas, which it takes 10,000 to call it a robust market. But just pitiful, light negotiated trade in the Southern Plains. And of course, they're the ones fighting the Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act, which would set a minimum requirement for big packers to play negotiated. All they want to do is ride the coattails of the North. They would just as soon not have any negotiated trade in the Southern Plains, no price discovery at all, and then ride on the coattails of the North and all the work they do with their leverage and their negotiating skills. But it ain't right. Box beef cutout values, last week's negotiated weighted average on box beef cutout values, all of last week on choice, $268.27. That weighted average price was $1.11 higher than the previous week's negotiated. Select trade, all of last week's weighted average, $242.03, up 22. Your late week sales on choice was a bit higher than your weighted average. Select was a bit lower. So that's kind of the trend there, that $26.25 choice select spread on all of last week's sales last week, and 603 loads of cuts, grinds, and trimmings, which is not much, but it's pretty typical. Slaughter, 677,000 last week, not comparable to your holiday week, but 27,000 more than the same week a year ago, which is very significant. Talk about your feeder cattle market. Your real-time index on DV auction ended the week at 171.68 cash price based on an 800-pound steer selling in your sale barns up through the middle 12 states there. That was up $5.04 100 there, and very impressive. So it was a good offering in there. Had over 21,000 in your RTI pool, which is a big number there, especially for the summertime. But you look at your cash feeders in your sale barns, $3 to $6 higher in your sales last week, coming back off of your holiday week. Calves were mixed. Fort Scott, Kansas, late in the week had a good sale. Didn't have as many loads of yearlings as sometimes they do, but they did have some impressive ones, including 60 head, 978-pound steers in Fort Scott, Kansas at $159.50. Coffeyville Stockyards, a lot of news with them. They have purchased the Coffeyville, Kansas market there off Brian Little, so now they have the Coffeyville North Town and South Town, which is in Oklahoma actually, but they had a good sale in the North Barn on Thursday. Friday they had a good sale in the South Barn in South Coffeyville, Oklahoma. The Coffeyville Stockyard South, we call it, 71 steers weighed 743 and brought $175. But your Zoetta stick-out sale of the day and late in the week last week was Bluegrass Stockyards in Richmond, Kentucky. They had over 10 loads of yearling steers through that market, and they typically get several loads in that market, but man, did they sell good, including 54 head of good black steers in Richmond, Kentucky at the Bluegrass market, weighed 973, bring $165. Your top quote, National Beef Wire top quote for the day late last week was out of Eastern Missouri Commission in Bowling Green, Missouri, right there on the eastern side of Missouri. The Angel family there sells 81 head, 642-pound steers at $205. And that's your feeder flash for Monday.